Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the planet. Welcome to this edition of AAU TZM Podcasts. My name is Adamantium, and today I am very pleased to announce to have my first guest on my podcast. He goes by the name of James Phillips. Say hello, James.
Hello, James.
And James has been working on a very interesting website in recent months. It goes by the name of tzmeducation.org. It's a very interesting website about the principles of education and what perspective from an RBE that would come from. So Jim is here today to answer questions about that website and also to answer some questions that I've received. And so basically, first things first, James, if you want to give the listeners an introduction about you, your name, what you do, and how you came to this movement.
Right, yes, well, my name's James Phillips. I'm a music teacher and father from the Watford area, father of two. That is, I'm a drummer. And I suppose I got into rock and roll at a pretty early age, and the anti-establishment of it seemed to appeal to my nature in some way, shape, or form. And from there, it sort of blossomed into me. Well, I realised that there was something up with the world. It didn't quite add up, and along came Rage Against the Machine, and made me. And I sort of investigated some of the cases they were into and what they were saying, and well, that makes quite a lot of sense, and also, you know, there was actually evidence behind what some of the issues they stood for, and that got me thinking further, and and I've been slowly reaching the conclusion that the Zeitgeist movement presented to me in the Venus Project, and it seemed to ring true with a lot of what I was thinking anyway, but just gone a hell of a lot further. So it just seems to make sense to support this direction for us to be moving in. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Right, well, I guess we might as well jump into these questions for you. So here we go. We've got how many? We've got 12 questions for you. So let's see how we do with these. Basically, we'll just go through them, just like spend as much time as we can within an hour's framing with them. So we'll see how we go. Right. First one for you is, how will the learning topics be decided?
Ooh. Well, that's a good question. There's a very good chapter at the website, Jacques Fresco on education. It's a chapter from the book The Best That Money Can't Buy, which any member who hasn't read it yet really should make sure they do. It's an excellent book, but basically the topics, you know, that will be taught will be all of those relevant to human interaction, human behaviour, the natural world, and the study of it through science, and any subject that's going to correlate to the well-being of human beings, humanity in general, and the pale blue dot. So so it's a very wide-ranging list. I can't exactly. I think Jacques said that he's got a list on there of topics that would be covered, and I believe, if I'm referring to the right list, there's about 19 of them. So I can't pull them off the top of my head, but hopefully that description gives a reasonable account of the sorts of topics that would be introduced in a resource-based economy. Of course, the principal thing here, though, is choice. You know, and the way in which they're delivered to people, so that you're making interesting actually intrinsically interesting, rather than needing to reward it with the way it's run at the moment, so that the only reason you'd ever want to learn is if you're actually rewarded for it, rather than the learning being rewarding within itself, which is something that change about education and learning, and I believe would do in a resource-based economy.
Yeah, I mean, because I think this question, it's really probably coming from the angle that how will children actually be, how will the topics actually be put forth towards the children, or how will it be decided? Oh, is history important, or is drama important? I think it's probably coming from that kind of angle.
I think it's very important that there's always a physical referent to learning. So I like there's a couple of examples that Jacques talks about where if you ask a child what's 2 plus 2, that child will have the sort of learning where they'll turn around and say 2 what, which I like, because 2 plus 2 is an error. Nothingness. If it either feeds someone or it's a transportation system. It's got to be something that actually delivers the goods. It can't be some whimsical bullshit, in the middle of nowhere. Children would be planting seeds and nurturing them and making sure they grow properly. They would be going and seeing production facilities and understanding the technologies there and how they grow. A whole magnitude of things, but generally that have a physical referent, and there would be, there would be a sort of I think that pretty much sort of covers the general mode of learning. There wouldn't be, as Jacques says, hopefully there wouldn't be the Mickey Mouse Club,
Please, hopefully not.
Yeah, actually be learning something relevant, and they're not stupid. They want to learn these things about the world. It's us that screw them over by treating them as less and thinking of them as less than what they are.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Right, if we, do you want to say any more on that question, or shall we move on?
I think it's a really wide topic. You could probably do an hour in total just on that, and you'd have to pull up 1,000,001 case studies. But I think I think we've covered the train of thought pretty well there, and it's the train of thought that's I think paramount.
Absolutely. Cool. Right, well, we'll move on to the next question then. So, number 2, how will learning resources, and I've got in brackets textbooks, stationery, etc., be distributed?
Right, well, first of all, have textbooks and learning stationery. Yeah, that's a big question in itself. The one thing I do know is that when you don't have an ownership-based society, but a usury-based society and an access abundance, the resources that will be able to be ploughed into actually a relevant education and as well as life-sustaining practices rather than just for the purpose of profit and marketing, you're going to have a much better system in general. So, if you're not expending loads of resources making one car for every human being on the face of planet Earth, you're probably going to be able to, those resources will become relevant to being able to be used in imaginative and creative and really forward-thinking, excellent ways for the educational system. So in terms of resources, you've got to remember just how many more you're going to have available to you to make learning, to maximize learning potential for every human being, mother, son, child, on the face of planet Earth, which I think would be just absolutely awe-inspiring, an amazing thing to do. In terms of the approach to educational materials, we may, who knows what the future may hold. I can't imagine we're going to have much of a paper society left in a resource-based economy, because with modern touchscreen technology, 3D imaging, not that technology would be necessarily, the core principle of learning. It would be part of it. There'd obviously be a human interaction because that's a valuable thing to have, but technology and the state of it in the future would be something so different and vastly different that we'd have to rethink everything. Textbooks may just go out the window. Maybe another way approaching things. We we have to sit down, look at the evidence, and think about that in the future. But one thing I do know, and circulating back to what I said originally, is that we're going to have so many more, an abundance of resources that are going to be used in far more efficient ways, actually based on research and evidence to make learning interesting. That the days of forced education will be long gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the availability of certain technologies that will provide the facility for optimal learning, it's already here. I can't remember exactly the name of the product. I think it's because I've seen adverts for it where it's basically like a sort of like handheld like display for books that you basically read from a small screen. I think it's called Kindle. I think it's like one of those like handheld data pad sort of things.
That sounds great. I think I might have seen something similar in Doug Millett's film Our Technical Reality. There was a sort of paper thin digital device that you can use to learn. Also, there's wonderful things happening on the internet now, like the Khan Academy, and maths-based games for kids like Mathletics and things like that. I mean, obviously they're reasonably competition-based, which is something to try and avoid wherever possible. But generally, it's great. They get to go on there and play games with their mates and get better at doing rudimentary math skills. So, technology, like you said, is already happening. Well, it would just be allowed to absolutely set sail in a resource-based economy rather than, as we know, being withheld by price of, cost efficiency.
Absolutely. Right. Shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okey-doke. Right, question 3. Will students all attend a single building?
These are interesting questions. To be honest, I don't actually know. I would presume there will be different areas for different age groups, and I have heard Roxanne talk about this, and this makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Is because of the amount of freedom individuals would have. If you said, I really want to teach the kids in this age group for a session, then you'd only do it for 3 hours, or less, because you would have someone be able to come in and talk about or teach different subjects that are more relevant to them. And also, actually, this is the profound point Roxanne made, is that to have one individual doing